Season leaders in receptions by running backs. Well, Christian McCaffrey leads this category with 85. And if he was to miss the entire season, the rest of it, he'd probably still end up leading. Welcome to Just the Stats NFL Top 10's for Friday. My name's Ernie Jennings, your host, and we're going to look at several things today, some very interesting things. Big game last night for Tampa Bay on the Thursday night game. Atlanta, too, they're trying to stay in the playoffs. We'll talk about that game. Their chances are slim, but Tampa Bay is trying to be very helpful. We'll look at some more top 10s this season, some leftover from yesterday on individual players. And but in between, right after we look at the game, Thursday night game, we're going to take a quick look at Phillip Rivers, top 10s for Phillip Rivers, possible starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts this Sunday. That would be amazing. And if he is the starting quarterback, that's going to have quite a viewership on that game. I think every network will be breaking in to watch him if he does anything special, or if he gets laid out and he's out of the game fairly quickly. We'll see what happens, but I got some top 10s for him. So with all that going, let's get started. We'll start up with this game first. The Atlanta Falcons visiting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I tell you, Tampa Bay is on a slide going down fast. Atlanta Falcons did what they could to give this game to Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay could not win it. They end up losing to the Atlanta Falcons 29-28. Just unbelievable. Tampa Bay, I just don't get it. What's happening with their team. And really, a lot of it's on Mayfield, Baker Mayfield. There's so many plays. I watched that game last night where he needs to get rid of the ball, but he keeps running around. And the bad thing with him compared to some quarterbacks is, and I like Baker Mayfield, actually. He's fun to watch. He's very competitive. But often when he's scrambling around, he's not looking downfield anymore. He's trying to get out of the situation, and he quits. He has to get out of that. Then he looks downfield, and he doesn't keep his eyes down there. Plus, just throw the ball away, go to the next play, but he doesn't do that. So, Atlanta Falcons win at 29-28, like I said. Now, in this game, this is what I'm saying. Tampa Bay had no business winning this game. Well, on one hand, they didn't, because Atlanta Falcons had a total net yards of 476 yards to Tampa Bay's 338. Kirk Cousins, who hadn't looked that good, throws for 365 net yards, 30 completions on 44 attempts. Just not acceptable. He had a quarterback rating of 117. They just outdid him. Now, Baker Mayfield, 19 completions on 34 attempts. He did have 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, though. Kirk Cousins had 3 touchdowns in this game, only sacked once, while Baker Mayfield was sacked 5 times. And some of them were unnecessary. They were not the fault of the offensive line generally. It was Baker Mayfield not seeing somebody open and doing a poor job of either getting rid of the ball or just throwing it away, whatever, something other than just taking that sack. But the reason I say that Atlanta Falcons did everything they could to help Tampa Bay win this game is that Atlanta Falcons set a record for their team with 19 penalties for 125 yards, 19 penalties. I swear, every play it seemed like almost there was a penalty called. 19 times they were penalized. The Buccaneers were penalized 4 times. Also, the Atlanta Falcons fumbled it 3 times, lost one of those, and yet somehow the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could not win despite having 19 penalties against their opponent. Just terrible. That's what I'm saying. On one hand, Atlanta Falcons were trying to help, and Tampa Bay trying to help Tampa Bay. And on the other hand, Tampa Bay is saying, we're just going to lose this game. We'll give it to you. We'll make this division close. And it's really going to be close now. So this opens the door for the Carolina Panthers now to take the lead. But it's still open because Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers play twice in the next 3 weeks. So that will probably decide it. They're going to have to split. It's possible. I guess it's very possible. If Atlanta Falcons could win out, they'd go 8-9. Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers each go finish at 8-9 as well. That's a possibility. I don't know who would win the division if they all finished at 8-9. One of them would win, and one would be in the playoffs despite having a losing record. The way they're going, that's a possibility. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But wow, Tampa Bay Buccaneers had this division wrapped up several weeks ago and have been on a losing streak. I think they've lost 5 out of 6, I think it is, something like that. They just aren't playing well. And really, offensively or defensively, I mean, you're giving up almost 500 yards of offense to the other team, and your team, like I said, Baker Mayfield, even with Evans back and Godwin on the field and Amika Buka, and you got Irving in the backfield, you'd think they could have a better offensive plan. I tell you, it really says something possibly about they're losing their offensive coordinator to the Jacksonville Jaguars, Liam Cohen, who became their head coach. I don't know if that has something to do with it, but right now their offense just doesn't look in sync at all. All right, that's a quick look at that game. Let me look at some other numbers in this game before we move on, some individual numbers. Like I said, Kirk Cousins, 30 completions, 44 attempts, 375 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 117 quarterback rating. Baker Mayfield, 19 completions, 34 attempts, 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, sacked 5 times, quarterback rating of 90. Now, in the rushing department, Bijan Robinson, man, he's good, just really good. 19 carries, 93 yards, so that's a 4.9 yards per carry, had 1 rushing touchdown. Also, he had 8 catches for 82 yards as well. So he ended up with 175 yards of offense by Bijan Robinson. Really a good game. David Sills, 6 catches, 78 yards, though he dropped. They still won the game. Atlanta won, but he dropped a pass that was just, he was wide open, hit him in the hands. His hands were funky looking the way he was trying to catch the ball, went right through his hands, dropped it. But for Atlanta Falcons, Kyle Pitts, huge game, his best game of his career, I believe. 11 catches, 166 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Man, they did not stop him. He really looked good against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Irving, 16 carries, 60 yards, 3.75 yards a carry. He also had, in the receiving department, he had 1 catch for 11 yards. So that was the big running back position spot. Really, they only had 22 carries, 88 yards, so exactly 4 yards a carry for this. But that's because Rachaad White had a carry. 1 carry he only had, but it was 20 yards. So that kind of skewed the numbers a little bit. Now, receiving-wise for Tampa Bay, Mike Evans, first game back, 6 catches, 132 yards. Unfortunately for me, I figured, well, first game back, I'm not going to start him on my fantasy team. Well, that was a mistake. I should have. He did not have any touchdowns, but 6 catches, 132 yards is really good. And I think this is helpful for Emeka Egbuka. 4 catches, 64 yards for him on 7 targets. Chris Godwin, 4 catches, 20 yards, but he did have a touchdown. And he had a 2-point conversion as well. Same play, looked almost identical. The touchdown reception and the 2-point conversion. And Jalen McMillan, also his first game back after missing the entire season, 2 catches, 38 yards for him. So they got all these players back, man. I mean, you look at these receivers in the running back situation, you just think, how are you not winning this game against the Atlanta Falcons? Somehow they managed to lose it. So good for Atlanta. They kept hanging in there despite being down pretty much most of the game. Well, at halftime, they were actually winning 14-13, but then Tampa Bay came back. Third quarter, pulled into the lead, had even a bigger lead at 28. I think it was 28 to 14. And then Atlanta Falcons came back with 15 points in the fourth quarter to win this game. And Tampa Bay really had very little time left to try to move down the field and just couldn't do it. Unbelievable. And just some mistakes. Baker Mayfield throws a low pass on 4th down. They needed to get the first down. The guy catches the ball in such a manner that he doesn't quite get to the first down marker. All he had to do was roll, or actually, if the ball had been thrown higher, he could have just fell backwards into first down easily. But because it was a low throw, he had to kind of fall down to catch it, but didn't try to even roll over or anything. And before he could, actually, he was touched. Came up, must have been like inch or two short. Turnover, and that's the game. Atlanta wins. All right, let's move on to spend a lot of time on that game, more than I thought I would. But let's look at some more. Oh, yeah, I said I was going to look at Phillip Rivers. Let's look at Phillip Rivers. Top 10s for Phillip Rivers. Like I said, Indianapolis Colts picked him up. Had him on the practice squad, but before I even started this podcast, I looked and some of the notes, people commentary and so forth. There's talk that he might start this game. Amazingly, no matter what the situation with the other quarterbacks are, they might start him. He's very familiar with the coach's schemes. He's had the same coach when he was with the Chargers. Wow, 44 years old. He hasn't played in 5 years. But let's look at some numbers. Start at the bottom here. Number 10, he's 11th all-time in the NFL in fourth quarter comebacks with 29. He's got a really great career, honestly. Unfortunately for him, never won a Super Bowl, but still a really great career. He's 14th all-time, negative categories, these next two. 14th all-time in quarterback sacks with 464 times he's been sacked, 14th most. He's 25th all-time in career interceptions with 209, which is quite a bit considering this is a category usually you see older players. And in fact, among active players, now that we're counting him as an active player, he leads the NFL among active players in interceptions, even over, say, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, those players. He's 6th all-time in career passing touchdowns with 421. He's 7th all-time in career passing yards with 63,440. And if he plays out the season, if that was to happen, it's very likely he would pass Ben Roethlisberger for 6th place. He's only less than 600 yards away from Ben Roethlisberger, which you would think in 4 games he could get if he plays that many. Everybody is like me. They're a little bit shocked that he's even going to do this, and that the Colts would even fathom the idea. But whatever. Now, as far as the Chargers go, when he was a quarterback for the Chargers, this is where he's got some good numbers along with the sacks. I'll mention those too. But he's first all-time in quarterback sacks in a single season. In one season, he had 49 times he was sacked. That's the most ever by a Charger. He also has the most quarterback sacks by a Charger in their career-wise, 445. So as you can see, he spent the vast majority of his time with the Chargers. Now, on the positive, in the season stats, in most passing yards in a single season, he doesn't hold the top spot, but he owns 6 of the top 10 most passing yards in a single season by a Charger. He has 6 of the top 10 spots. Really good. So very consistent there. Number 1 all-time in career passing TDs for the San Diego Chargers, or the Los Angeles Chargers now, with 397. And he's the all-time career passing yards leader for the Chargers with 59,271 passing yards. So like I said, really a great career. This is very interesting to watch, and I will be watching it if he's starting this game. All right, let's move on to some of our other players that have been playing all season. Season leaders in receptions by running backs. Well, Christian McCaffrey leads this category with 85. And if he was to miss the entire season, the rest of it, he'd probably still end up leading. Might be close. Next up is Jahmyr Gibbs with 58. And then behind him is Bijan Robinson, who had 56, who will possibly overtake Gibbs if Gibbs doesn't have a good game, because Robinson, this is not including the game last night with Robinson and the Falcons where he had 7 or 8 catches in that game. Actually, yeah, he had 8 catches. So that may change things depending on what Gibbs does this week. Now, fourth is Devon Achane with 55. Chase Brown with 51, then Kenneth Gainwell with 50. We'll talk about him again. R.J. Harvey made his appearance, first time on this list. He's got 37 now. So Christian McCaffrey, he's got a chance to get 100. There's 4 games to go. He only needs 4 catches, basically, a game. And he's been averaging that, obviously. And he'll go over 100 receptions. So he's got a chance to have the most receptions. I think it's 107 in a single season. We'll see if he can get there. Now, looking at most yards, this is Christian McCaffrey, 806 yards. Like I said, he didn't have any more. Now, here he needs to average 50 yards to get to 1,000. He needs to get 50 yards, basically, a game over the next 4 to make it. That's a possibility. Not as certain, I think, as the amount of receptions, but we'll see what happens. And then, because right now he's averaging not quite 50 yards a game, though. So, well, yeah, he is. We'll see. Bijan Robinson second over Gibbs. He's, with the amount of receptions, they're very close in receptions, but Robinson does a lot more with them. He's got 602 yards receiving. That's not even counting the 80-something he had yesterday. He's the only one anywhere near Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey has 806. Robinson has 602. So a couple hundred yards. That's a lot. But then there's a big drop again to Jahmyr Gibbs, who's third with 471. So these top 4 really separate. In fact, all the way down to the number 5, because Jahmyr Gibbs with 474. Next up is Devon Achane with 383. So, 91 yards behind Gibbs. Then Achane over Breece Hall has a 383 to 309. So he's got a 74 yard lead. After that, they're all bunched up from Breece Hall in 5th with 309 down to James Cook, who's new on the list, with 267. So the bottom 6 players are only separated by 42 yards, those 6 players. So those could flip-flop. And what's really interesting about these receiving yards by running backs is that, first of all, we have 2 new players. Jaylen Warren for the Steelers has 277. He comes in at 9th. And James Cook, I think this is his first time on this top 10 list. James Cook for the Bills has 267. But this is also the first time this season that Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Warren have been on this top 10 leaders in receiving yards by running backs for the Steelers at the same time. You got both Gainwell and Warren for the Steelers, both on the top 10. Gainwell's 8th, Warren's 9th, and they're only separated by 9 yards. That shows you how much they're used and how equally those two players are used as far as receiving goes. Now, when you combine their yards, they have a total of 563 yards between the two of them. That's still less than Robinson or McCaffrey. So that just shows you, again, how good McCaffrey and Robinson are. McCaffrey's got this wrapped up because of quantity of receptions. Robinson's much more efficient in his catches. And watching him last night, he's such a fascinating runner. He is very fast, but he doesn't see. He just seems to be kind of waiting. Boom! He hits a hole, or he finds a little groove, or he makes a little turn or something, and he's out in the open again, and he's running for 10 more yards. He's really a fun player to watch. Now, looking at the next category, that is yards from scrimmage. And again, this is where Bijan Robinson has overtaken Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey had the lead, but then he had the bye week, and that was enough to give Bijan Robinson the lead. And the fact that Bijan Robinson had 180, 190 yards of offense yesterday, it's going to put a lot of pressure on Taylor and McCaffrey to keep up the pace. And I don't think they can, honestly. Bijan Robinson could pull away here with that number. Very interesting. McCaffrey, first of all, Taylor was in the lead pretty good for a while, but this last month, his numbers have dropped. And then last week against the Jaguars, he had less than 100 yards of offense, total offense, and that hurt him as well. Christian McCaffrey's third. I should say that Bijan Robinson's first with 1,683 yards. Jonathan Taylor second with 1,660. And McCaffrey's 5 yards behind Taylor with 1,655. Now, Christian McCaffrey, what's interesting about him is he has more rushing yards now. All season, almost, he had more receiving yards than rushing yards. But he's got 849 rushing yards, 806 receiving yards. So in both of those categories, he has a chance to go over 1,000 yards in both categories. I don't think any of these other players have that chance. In fact, none of them do, except maybe Robinson. He's got 602 yards before last night, throwing another 80. So he's got about 685 or so, somewhere in that range. He would need to average well over 100 yards in the next 3 games. That's not going to happen, so I doubt it. So really, only Christian McCaffrey has a chance to have 1,000 yards in both offense and defense. While I had these players as possible MVPs, they've all kind of fallen off. Is just standing out, though Robinson is putting on a good show here late in the year. So we'll watch him. Nobody new on this top 10 list, just a little bit of a shakeup as far as positioning goes. James Cook for the Bills is 4th. And so you can see this chart. I will say you can see this chart if you watch the video on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. There are 2 wide receivers on this list, and that's James Smith-Njigba with 1,464 yards, which is good enough for 7th. And at 8th is Puka Nacua with 1,259. He's a little over 200 yards behind Smith-Njigba. That could possibly be a race to see who ends up as the best wide receiver as far as yards go. I mean, Smith-Njigba's had it all year, primarily because he's played the whole season, whereas Puka Nacua has missed some games, at least one, maybe two. If not for that, this would be a two-man race and not just a one-man race. So we'll have to watch and see what happens there. All right, we got to keep moving. Now on defense, looking at tackles for loss. I mentioned this earlier in the week, but I'll mention it again. Myles Garrett leads the NFL this season with 31 tackles for loss. 6 more than Max Crosby for the Raiders, who has 25. Those two players have been outstanding. Third is Brian Burns with the Giants with 18. So 6 tackles for loss difference between Garrett and Crosby, but 7 more between Crosby and Burns. And then from Burns down, it just is a big group of, they're only separated by 6 total between the third spot with Brian Burns at 18 and Nick Bonito with 12. There's actually 6 players with 12 tackles for loss. Looking at the sacks now, this is where Myles Garrett has an even bigger gap over Brian Burns again. Myles Garrett has 20 sacks this season. He's on the verge of breaking into the top 10 all time and has a good chance to set the NFL record. I've noticed that they say it's 22 and a half, but I think if you go by the unofficial record, it's 23. And I think that's what they really should be looking at. It's only unofficial because they had to watch video and stuff, but it's been researched so thoroughly, I do not know why it's not counted. They count these other records earlier this year when they introduced all the records from the old leagues, and they said they're going to be considered as part of the NFL record. I do not know why they don't do the same thing with sacks and let these earlier players that played before, I believe it was 1982, be counted as far as sacks go. It's either that or 1973. Whatever the number is, these older players deserve to be included. But Brian Burns for the Giants is second with 13, so that's 7 behind Myles Garrett. Max Crosby, I just mentioned him. He's got 9. He's in the top 10, tied for 10th. I only mentioned him because how well he's doing in tackles for loss as well as sacks. Only good player they have on that team right now on defense anyway. All right, that is a wrap for this episode. We got some good things happening. Kind of a hodgepodge podcast there. Sorry about the jumping around there a little bit. I thought I had all my numbers all lined up, but not quite as well as I thought. I was so last minute with that Phillip Rivers thing. Maybe that was what it was. I don't know. All right, we've got huge games coming up, like I said, this week with the playoffs scenarios everywhere. Just such important games. You know, Buffalo New England game is big. Buffalo loses, it really hurts their playoff chances. In fact, not just their chance to catch New England. They win that game, they pull within a game of New England, and then they're going to have to hope New England loses a game somewhere else. But New England has a 2-game lead over the Bills right now. That Baltimore game, they need to win to stay in the playoff hunt with after losing to Pittsburgh last week. Jacksonville, though they play the Jets, they should win that game, but they have only a 1-game lead over Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts, so they can't afford to lose. The Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs, that's a big game. The same for the Chargers. To stay in playoff contention, they need to win. Kansas City, their only possibility of being in the playoffs is to win out, so they have to win that game. Houston should win over Arizona Cardinals, but they need to win. They have to win as well. They're 8-5. They can't afford to lose because they're not even in the playoffs at this point. Yeah, I guess they are. They're the 7th. Maybe they're the 7th seed, but if they lose, they won't be. They'll drop out. Chicago needs to beat Cleveland to keep up pace with the Green Bay Packers after dropping. Chicago dropped from first place in playoff standings to 7th. They're the 7th seed, which is the worst, the last seed to be. Not the worst, I should say, because you're still in the playoffs, but it is the last seed in the playoffs. So they need to win to stay even that close. Detroit's right on their heels. The And then looking at Indianapolis needs to win. Boy, they've got it rough, though. They play at Seattle. Seattle needs to win to keep pace with and put the pressure on the Rams. That's a big game. Boy, another huge game is Green Bay Packers and the Denver Broncos. That game Sunday afternoon. Denver wants to hold on and try to overtake. Well, right now they're in the lead over the Patriots, but man, Denver plays 4 very tough games, starting with the Green Bay Packers. So we'll see what happens to them, but they need to win. Not so much to win their division. That's probably pretty wrapped up, but to hold on to that number 1 seed. And Green Bay needs to win to stay in first place and to hold off Chicago and Detroit. So like I said, some huge games coming up. One more, Detroit. Well, Carolina, New Orleans. Carolina could be outright first place in their division if they win. Detroit Lions at the Los Angeles Rams. Detroit needs to win that game for sure to stay in playoff contention. And the Rams need to win to stay in first place because it's very likely that Seattle beats Indianapolis Colts, and they're just sitting there waiting for the Rams to lose. And finally, Monday night, Miami Dolphins have been on a 5-game winning streak. They're 6-7. They have a slim chance, but they need to basically win out, kind of like the Chiefs. They need to win out and have some things happen. Pittsburgh Steelers are 7-6. They need to hang on. They need to win to hang on to first place. So got a lot of big games. Looking forward to all of them. Hope you enjoy the games. Hope your team wins, unless it's the Jets who are playing the Jaguars, then I can't hope your team wins. And in fact, if I had the time, I'd probably say there's some other games I'd rather see certain teams win than other ones. However, it factors in the best interests of the Jaguars. But anyway, appreciate you listening. You can watch this podcast on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. So if you go there, you can watch it. You can see the graphs that I'll have up and that type of thing. You can also listen to it on YouTube or listen to it on Apple or Spotify or whatever app you might use. Again, I appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment if you'd like. I'll always listen to that. Appreciate my latest subscriber. Always like anybody who's subscribing, and keep doing that as well. All right. That is a wrap for Friday. I'll see you on Monday. I'm out.